What happens when a beloved actor tries to share his truth on live television, only to be mocked and belittled by a host who refuses to listen? In just 32 seconds, one dismissive comment would shatter the fake smiles and polite conversation, exposing a shocking confrontation that nobody saw coming. Ralph Little walked onto the set that morning, expecting a friendly chat. The actor, known for his warmth and genuine personality, had agreed to appear on the show to discuss his latest project and some personal challenges he'd been facing. The studio lights were bright, the audience was settled, and Lorraine Kelly sat across from him with her trademark smile. But that smile wouldn't last long. "So Ralph, lovely to have you here," Lorraine began, her voice syrupy sweet. "Tell us about this new show you're working on." Ralph leaned forward, genuinely enthusiastic. "Thanks for having me, Lorraine. Yes, I'm really excited about it. It's a drama that deals with some quite heavy themes. Actually, mental health, family struggles, the kind of real issues that people face every day but don't always talk about." Lorraine's smile tightened just a fraction. "Mental health. Right. So, it's one of those depressing shows then?" The audience shifted uncomfortably. Ralph's expression faltered for just a moment before he recovered. "Well, I wouldn't call it depressing," he said carefully. "I'd call it honest. We're trying to show that it's okay to struggle, that asking for help is a sign of strength, not weakness. I actually went through something similar myself a few years back, and I think—" "Oh, here we go," Lorraine interrupted, rolling her eyes theatrically. "Everyone's got a mental health story these days, haven't they? It's become quite trendy." The air in the studio went cold. Panel member Jennifer Ross, sitting to Lorraine's left, actually gasped audibly. Marcus Webb, another regular panelist, looked down at his notes, clearly uncomfortable. Ralph blinked, processing what he'd just heard. "I'm sorry, did you just call mental health struggles trendy?" Lorraine waved her hand dismissively. "You know what I mean. 10 years ago, people just got on with things. Now, everyone's claiming they're anxious or depressed. It's exhausting, frankly." Jennifer leaned forward, trying to intervene. "Lorraine, I don't think that's—" "I'm talking to Ralph, Jennifer," Lorraine snapped, not even looking at her. "This is my show." Ralph sat back in his chair, his jaw tight. "With respect, Lorraine, that's an incredibly harmful thing to say. Mental health conditions are real. They're serious, and dismissing them as a trend is exactly the kind of attitude that stops people from getting help." "Oh, don't lecture me," Lorraine shot back. "I've been doing this for decades. I think I know a bit more about the real world than some actor who plays pretend for a living." The audience was dead silent now. Marcus Webb cleared his throat nervously. "Maybe we should move on to—" "I'm not finished," Lorraine cut him off sharply. She turned back to Ralph, her expression cold. "You come on here, on my show, expecting what? Sympathy? A platform to talk about your feelings? This is meant to be light entertainment, Ralph. People tune in to escape their problems, not hear about yours." Ralph's hands gripped the armrests of his chair. "I came on here because your producer asked me to talk about the show, which deals with these issues. You knew what the conversation was going to be about." "Well, maybe I changed my mind," Lorraine said with a sharp smile. "It's my show. I can talk about whatever I want." Jennifer tried again, her voice gentle but firm. "Lorraine, I really think we need to—" "Jennifer, if you interrupt me one more time, you can leave too," Lorraine hissed. Jennifer's face went pale, but she nodded and sat back. Ralph watched this exchange, his expression growing harder. "Do you speak to all your colleagues like that?" "Excuse me?" Lorraine's head whipped back toward him. "I asked if you speak to everyone on your team with such disrespect," Ralph said, his voice calm but steely. "Because from where I'm sitting, you've just belittled a serious health issue, dismissed your own panelist, and made it very clear that you think your position gives you the right to say whatever you want without consequences." Lorraine's face flushed red. "How dare you come onto my show and criticize me? Who do you think you are? I'm someone who thought this was going to be a respectful conversation, Ralph replied. Clearly, I was wrong. Marcus Webb, sensing the situation spiraling, jumped in. Why don't we take a quick break and... We are not taking a break, Lorraine snapped. Ralph, if you have such a problem with how I run my show, perhaps you should leave. Perhaps I should, Ralph agreed, his voice steady. But before I do, I want everyone watching to understand something. Mental health is not a trend. Depression, anxiety, trauma, these are real conditions that affect millions of people. And when someone in a position of influence dismisses them as fashionable complaints, it does real damage. Lorraine stood up abruptly. I've heard quite enough. Thank you. This interview is over. I agree, Ralph said, also standing. But I'm not leaving because you're throwing me off. I'm leaving because I refuse to sit here and be disrespected, and I refuse to watch you disrespect your own colleagues. He turned to Jennifer and Marcus. I'm sorry you had to witness this. You both deserve better. Jennifer gave him a small, grateful smile. Marcus nodded, looking relieved. Lorraine pointed toward the exit. The door is that way. I know where it is, Ralph said calmly. He looked directly into the camera. To anyone watching who's struggling, please don't let anyone make you feel like your pain doesn't matter. It does. You matter. And asking for help is the bravest thing you can do. Get him out of here! Lorraine barked to someone off camera, but Ralph was already walking. He removed his microphone, placed it carefully on his chair, and headed toward the exit. The studio audience sat in stunned silence, many of them looking at Lorraine with expressions ranging from confusion to outright disapproval. As Ralph reached the edge of the set, Lorraine called out one last time, You'll never work in television again after this. I'll make sure of it. Ralph stopped, turned back, and looked at her with something close to pity. If that's the kind of television you represent, Lorraine, I'm not sure I want to. And with that, he walked off the set. Jennifer Ross sat frozen in her seat, her hands trembling slightly. Marcus Webb stared down at the desk, his face unreadable. The audience remained silent, the awkward tension so thick you could cut it with a knife. Lorraine tried to regain control, turning to the camera with a forced smile. Well, that was unexpected. Some people just can't handle a bit of honest conversation, can they? Nobody in the audience laughed. Nobody clapped. The silence was deafening. Jennifer finally found her voice. Lorraine, I think what Ralph was trying to say... I don't care what Ralph was trying to say, Lorraine interrupted again, her voice sharp. He came on my show. He disrespected me, and he left. End of story. But you told him to leave, Marcus pointed out quietly. Lorraine's eyes flashed dangerously. Are you defending him, Marcus? Marcus looked up, meeting her gaze steadily. I'm just stating facts, Lorraine. You did tell him to leave. And before that, you did dismiss mental health issues as trendy. Those things happened. We all heard them. I was making a point, Lorraine insisted, her voice rising. I was trying to have a real conversation instead of the usual celebrity nonsense where everyone agrees with everything and nothing means anything. There's a difference between having a real conversation and being cruel, Jennifer said softly. The words hung in the air like smoke. Lorraine turned on her slowly. What did you just say to me? Jennifer took a breath, clearly gathering her courage. I said there's a difference between honesty and cruelty. You weren't being honest with Ralph. You were being cruel. And you were cruel to me, too, threatening to throw me off the show for trying to help. I wasn't threatening you, Lorraine said through gritted teeth. I was maintaining control of my own show. By silencing anyone who disagrees with you? Marcus asked. Lorraine looked between her two panelists, her face a mask of barely controlled fury. I cannot believe what I'm hearing right now. You're both supposed to support me. This is my show, mine, and you're taking his side? We're not taking sides, Jennifer said gently. We're just pointing out that what happened here wasn't okay. The way you spoke about mental health wasn't okay. The way you spoke to Ralf wasn't okay. The way you spoke to us wasn't okay. I have been doing this job for years, Lorraine said, her voice shaking now, though whether with anger or something else was hard to tell. I have built this show from nothing. I have earned the right to run it however I see fit. Success doesn't give you the right to hurt people, Marcus said quietly. The simple statement seemed to hit harder than anything else that had been said. Lorraine stared at him, her mouth opening and closing, as if searching for a response. Finally, she turned back to the camera. "We're going to take that break now," she said, her voice clipped and cold. "We'll be right back." The moment the camera light went off, Lorraine stood up and walked off the set without another word, leaving Jennifer and Marcus sitting there in the wreckage of what had just happened. Backstage, Ralph Little was in the green room collecting his things. His hands were steady now, though his heart was still racing. A production assistant approached him, nervously. "Mr. Little, I just wanted to say, I thought what you said was really brave. About mental health. My brother, he's been struggling, and hearing you talk about it like that, it meant something." Ralph looked up and smiled, a real smile this time. "Thank you. That means a lot. I hope your brother gets the help he needs." "Me too," the assistant said. "And for what it's worth, I don't think you did anything wrong in there." "I appreciate that," Ralph said, "though I'm sure not everyone will see it that way." In the studio, Jennifer and Marcus sat together in the uncomfortable silence. "That was horrible," Jennifer finally said. "Yeah," Marcus agreed. "I've never seen her like that." "Should we have done more?" Jennifer asked. "Should we have walked out with him?" Marcus considered this. "Maybe, but we also tried to intervene. She shut us down every time." "I know," Jennifer said, "but I feel terrible. He was trying to talk about something important, something that could help people, and she destroyed him." "She tried to," Marcus corrected, "but I don't think she succeeded. Did you see the way he handled himself? He stayed calm. He stayed dignified. He made his point, and he left on his own terms." "After she told him to leave," Jennifer reminded him. "After she told him to leave, yes," Marcus acknowledged. "But he was going to leave anyway. You could see it in his face. The moment she called mental health trendy, he was done." "I don't blame him," Jennifer said. "I was ready to leave then too." "But you stayed," Marcus said. "We both did. And we called her out, as much as we could." "Do you think it'll make a difference?" Jennifer asked. Marcus shrugged. "I don't know, but it needed to be said." Back on set, the crew was preparing for the show to resume. Lorraine returned, her makeup touched up, her expression carefully neutral. She didn't look at Jennifer or Marcus as she sat down. When the camera light came back on, Lorraine's smile was back in place, though it didn't quite reach her eyes. "Welcome back," she said smoothly. "Now, before we were so rudely interrupted, we were discussing, well, it doesn't matter what we were discussing. Let's move on to something more pleasant, shall we?" But the damage was done. The tension in the studio was palpable. The audience, which had been enthusiastic at the start of the show, now sat subdued and uncomfortable. Jennifer and Marcus exchanged glances, but said nothing. Lorraine tried to continue with the show, introducing the next segment with forced cheerfulness. "We have a wonderful cooking demonstration coming up next. Celebrity chef Antonio Ricci is going to show us how to make the perfect risotto." Antonio appeared from backstage, all smiles and energy, seemingly unaware of what had just transpired. "Ciao, Lorraine. Wonderful to be here." "Wonderful to have you, Antonio," Lorraine said, her professional mask firmly in place. "So tell us about this risotto." As Antonio began setting up his ingredients, chatting enthusiastically about Italian cuisine, the show attempted to return to normalcy. But everyone in that studio knew that something had fundamentally shifted. Jennifer watched Lorraine interact with Antonio, noting how different her demeanor was. She was warm, engaged, laughing at his jokes. It was as if the confrontation with Ralf had never happened. But it had happened, and no amount of fake smiles and cooking demonstrations could erase it. During a commercial break, while Antonio was plating his risotto, Marcus leaned over to Lorraine. "Are we going to talk about what happened earlier?" "There's nothing to talk about," Lorraine said curtly. "It's handled. We're moving on." "But Lorraine," Marcus pressed gently, "the audience saw everything. The people at home saw everything. We can't just pretend it didn't happen." "Watch me," Lorraine said coldly. Jennifer joined in. "Maybe we should address it. Acknowledge what happened. Maybe even apologize." Lorraine's head snapped toward her. "Apologize? For what? For having standards? For refusing to let my show become a therapy session?" "For dismissing mental health as a trend," Jennifer said quietly but firmly. "For the way you spoke to Ralf. For the way you spoke to us." "I spoke to you the way any host speaks to their panel when they're trying to maintain control of the conversation," Lorraine said. "If you can't handle that, perhaps you're in the wrong profession." Marcus and Jennifer exchanged looks again, and this time there was something resolute in their expressions. The camera light came back on, and Lorraine seamlessly transitioned back into host mode. "And we're back. Antonio, this looks absolutely delicious." "Grazie, Lorraine," Antonio beamed, oblivious to the undercurrent of tension. "Would you like to try?" "I would love to," Lorraine said, accepting a spoonful of risotto. That's divine." The segment continued, with Antonio's infectious enthusiasm providing a stark contrast to the oppressive atmosphere that had settled over the rest of the panel. When it concluded and Antonio left the set to warm applause, Lorraine turned to the camera for her closing remarks. "Well, that's all we have time for today," she began. "Actually, Lorraine," Marcus interrupted, "if I could just say something before we close." Lorraine's smile froze. "Marcus, we're out of time." "This will only take a moment," Marcus insisted, looking directly at the camera. "I think it's important that we acknowledge what happened earlier in the show. Our guest, Ralf Little, was here to discuss his new drama series, which deals with mental health issues. During that conversation, some things were said that were dismissive of mental health struggles, and I want to be clear that those views don't represent everyone on this panel." Lorraine's face went white, then red. "Marcus, that's not—" "I'm not finished," Marcus said calmly. "Mental health is important. It's not a trend. It's not fashionable. It's a real and serious issue that affects real people. And if anyone watching is struggling, please know that your pain is valid, and there is help available." Jennifer nodded. "I agree with Marcus completely, and I want to apologize to Ralf, if he's watching, for not speaking up more strongly in the moment." The studio audience, which had been silent throughout this exchange, suddenly erupted in applause. It started with one person, then two, then spread throughout the entire audience until everyone was clapping. Everyone except Lorraine. She sat rigid in her chair, her face a carefully controlled mask, though her eyes blazed with fury. When the applause finally died down, she turned to the camera. "Well," she said, her voice tight, "I'm so glad my panelists feel comfortable sharing their opinions on my show. Tune in tomorrow for more of the same, apparently. Goodbye." The camera cut away, and the show was over. The moment they were off air, Lorraine stood up so quickly her chair nearly tipped over. She looked at Marcus and Jennifer with an expression of pure betrayal. "How dare you?" she said, her voice shaking. "How dare you undermine me like that, on my own show, in front of everyone?" "We weren't trying to undermine you," Marcus said steadily. "We were trying to do the right thing." "The right thing?" Lorraine's voice rose. "The right thing would have been to support me, to back me up, to remember who signs your paychecks." "The right thing was to stand up for people who are struggling with mental health issues," Jennifer said. "The right thing was to acknowledge that what was said earlier was harmful." "Get out," Lorraine said suddenly. "Both of you, get out of my sight." "Lorraine, let's talk about this rationally," Marcus began. There's nothing to talk about. Lorraine cut him off. You made your choice. You chose him over me. You chose to embarrass me, to contradict me, to make me look like the villain on my own show. Well, congratulations. You got what you wanted. Now get out. Marcus and Jennifer stood up slowly, gathering their things. As they walked off the set, several crew members gave them supportive nods and quiet words of encouragement. Behind them, Lorraine stood alone on the empty set, surrounded by the bright lights and cameras, the remnants of Antonio's cooking demonstration still scattered across the counter. The studio audience had filed out. The crew was packing up equipment, and Lorraine Kelly, host of her own show, the woman who had built an empire on friendly morning television, stood in the center of it all, completely alone. The confrontation that had started with Ralph Little's appearance had exposed something that had perhaps been bubbling under the surface for a long time. The friendly facade had cracked, revealing something brittle and fragile underneath. And now, with her guest gone and her panelists walking away, Lorraine was left to face the reality of what had just happened. In the green room, Ralph Little picked up his coat and headed for the exit. As he walked through the corridor, he passed several crew members who stopped him to shake his hand, to tell him they agreed with what he'd said, to thank him for speaking up. Outside the studio, the morning air was cool and fresh. Ralph took a deep breath, letting the tension drain from his shoulders. His phone was already buzzing with messages, texts, and calls from friends, colleagues, and journalists who had watched the interview live. But for now, he just stood there, feeling the sun on his face, grateful that he'd stood his ground, that he'd spoken his truth, even when it had cost him. Back inside, Lorraine sat in her dressing room, staring at her reflection in the mirror. The makeup was perfect. The hair was perfect, but the eyes staring back at her were filled with something she didn't want to name. Her phone rang. It was her producer. She let it ring